Hi, Digital Foundry Squad! Exclamation point. We aren't a military unit. Just point that out. A rumor was reported last week that Sony had already shown an early prototype of the PlayStation 6 at the Tokyo Game Show back in September, assuming the PS6 will launch by the end of 2027. I'm wondering what could be shown 3 years early from launch. What do you think? Keapora asks, hi founders, exclamation point. As for the rumours that Sony showed some people an early prototype of PS6 during TGS, don't you think that's a bit early considering the PS5 Pro hasn't even been officially released yet? I also feel that generations as we know them are over, and at the moment I don't see a future where anyone really needs to upgrade to a future PS6 at launch. It's more likely that almost all early PS6 games will run well on PS5, even better on the Pro. I think we learned a good lesson with the transition to PS4 to PS5, didn't we? Can you see a significant graphical upgrade for the PS6 in just 3 to 4 years compared to what the PS5 Pro will be capable of? Well, you were at TGS, John. Personally, yes. I find the idea that platform holders would roll up to a major event with hardware kind of hard to believe. Surely these briefings would take place at their headquarters. I don't know. What do you think about all of this PS6 stuff anyway?
I mean, PS6 or whatever the next generation will be is most certainly in development, right? These consoles take a long time to make, but I doubt that they're in any position right now to be. I'm sure there's partners involved as always, but it's probably a very tight, closed off circle at the moment. I'd assume most of Sony was focused on most of the hardware team was focused on getting the PS5 Professional finished and out the door. And then, they've moved on from there. And who knows about when it would launch? They're saying end of 2027.
Well, that's the rumor.
That's
an assumption.
Even if it was, though, you don't really see new hardware like this until it's within spitting distance of launch, right? Like, we're not going to see anything. Right. We're not going to be hearing. There may be leaks, but we're not going to be hearing anything concrete, and certainly nothing official until it's within, say, 9 months of launch, I would say.
Right.
So,
Alex?
I mean, yeah, I would doubt they would show it off there, and I imagine it's going to be running on maybe, I don't know what process node it's going to run on actually, but I imagine the technology that is built up for it has yet to have been taped out. So it'd be just emulating aspects of it that you'd imagine in the future with other chips that are currently available, I imagine. And so about that, that's really all I have to say. I don't put much stock in that rumor, and I have no idea where it would have started.
Yeah, about that. Well, look, here's the thing, right? You can have technology today and, it can be ultra powerful and it will be beyond what a console does today. AMD, I mean, it was, there was a recent news. In fact, we discussed it on DF Direct about Intel trying to get the PS6 contract, but apparently AMD got it. Well, look, 4 years from now, I'm pretty sure that AMD and Sony would be able to postulate what kind of hardware they could produce at that point. And maybe they could use today's components to provide a kind of ballpark, very, very early approximation of what that kit is going to do. Whether you would then take that kit, pack it all up and take it to the Tokyo Game Show is another thing, particularly when your headquarters is in Tokyo already. Is another thing entirely. But I just think that there are certain things, certain trends that we can see that are happening in gaming that just makes sense for PlayStation 6, and they're all in the PS5 Pro, right? In some early form. Obviously, the race to just beef up silicon, beef up GPU with more transistors isn't happening anymore. PS5 Pro proves that out. We're going to be seeing a shift to AI features, and I've said it before and I'll say it again. I think the PS5 Pro is essential in getting that hardware out there, getting people developing for it, and perhaps doing things more than AI upscaling. So, I think that's the future. I think that's where PlayStation 6 is going to be going. It's where PC is going. It's where Microsoft is almost certainly going to be going. I think they can obviously talk about what they're potentially doing for PlayStation 6. Do you actually need a prototype hardware that is in any way representative of final PS6 hardware at this point? No, you don't. Prototype can mean anything. So, yeah, I'm not poo-pooing the whole thing as such. But, there are obviously discussions going on. It's pretty obvious that there's going to be a PlayStation 6 because, it just kind of makes sense. It's the entire foundation of the Sony business model. Microsoft, we know they're in on Gen 10 as well. How that actually manifests, yet to be seen. But yeah, in terms of whether we need a PlayStation 6, well, that's kind of like up to Sony, really. I do think that this whole cross-gen thing with PS4 and PS5 has probably been quite instructional, though. Phasing out PlayStation 5 generation is probably going to be even more difficult than PS4.
Yes.
What do you think about that, actually, Alex? Because you're all in on the idea that we're just going to move on to iterations, as it were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think PS6 is going to be different enough to offer some sort of different experience to those who are early buyers, hopefully. I'd hope for their sake. But I do think the reality and the cost of making software is going to be so that, and even just making the hardware itself, I actually don't know how cheap it's going to be. Like the PS5 was relatively, even then that was more expensive than a PS4 was at launch. So I do think the rolling generation will just cannot be there. You can't make a AAA game for 120 million US dollars or more and then sell it to only 1 to 2 million people within like the first year or something like that. You need to be this is not the returns that companies like Sony want. So yeah, I think it's going to be cross-gen here on out for a long time, Rich.